I'll never forget that day when April Johnson walked into our boutique shoe store. It was like a gust of wind had blown in, carrying with it an air of superiority that filled every corner of our elegant shop. I was 28 then, working as a sales associate in this high-end store nestled in the heart of downtown. The soft lighting that usually highlighted our designer shoes seemed to dim in comparison to April's commanding presence. At 40, April was a well-known figure in our town, the owner of a successful supermarket chain. Her success was a testament to her ambition and hard work, having climbed from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of the business world. But that morning, as I greeted her with a carefully practiced smile, I could sense that her success had gone to her head. "Good morning, Mrs. Johnson. It's an honor to have you back," I said, my voice steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. I was already familiar with April's reputation, and I watched as she cast a critical eye over our shelves, her gaze lingering on our most expensive shoes with an air of disdain. "I need something truly special today, Grace," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Something no one else has. You understand, don't you? I can't look like those poor people at my event." I felt a wave of discomfort wash over me, but I pushed it down, maintaining my professional demeanor. "Of course, Mrs. Johnson. Perhaps our exclusive collection imported from Italy might suit your refined taste," I suggested, leading her to a special area of the store. As we walked, April continued to reveal her warped values. She spoke about expectations, respect, and how someone of her level couldn't be seen in shoes that just anyone could buy at a sale. With each word, I felt a growing knot in my chest, a mix of frustration and sadness at how someone could be so disconnected from the real world. I tried on several increasingly extravagant shoes for her, patiently fitting each one despite her growing irritation. "This one feels good, but it lacks the impact I'm looking for," she complained. "Don't you have anything more special? Something that screams power and status?" I excused myself to fetch another pair from our stockroom, my hands shaking slightly as I carried the box back. Kneeling at April's feet, I carefully opened the box to reveal a pair of gleaming high heels. "Please try these, Mrs. Johnson. They're from our exclusive collection, just arrived from Switzerland," I said, keeping my voice steady. As I helped her into the shoes, I could feel my discomfort growing. I knew April was a difficult customer, but I still hoped these shoes would meet her high expectations. April eyed the shoes suspiciously, then turned her gaze to me. I could feel my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the straps. "I really hope these are good, Grace," she said, her voice laced with doubt. "So far, nothing you've shown me seems worth the price tag." Then came the words that felt like a slap across my face. "Are you sure you're qualified to work in a store of this caliber?" I took a deep breath, willing myself not to show any emotion. "I assure you, Mrs. Johnson, we're all trained to provide the best service. These shoes are of the highest quality and truly special," I replied calmly, focusing on adjusting the shoe. But April wasn't finished. She looked at the shoes, then back at me, her words cutting deep. "Special? Grace, if these shoes were truly special, I wouldn't feel like I'm trying on something anyone with a credit card could buy. This is why people like you work in retail, and people like me make the real decisions." I swallowed hard, the humiliation almost unbearable, especially coming from someone I was trying to help. Little did I know that the very next day, this same woman would be shocked by what I would do for her daughter. As April's words hung in the air, I felt a lump form in my throat. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure as I replied, assuring her that I understood her concerns and respected her opinion. I offered to help find something specific if she had anything particular in mind. But April wasn't finished. She roughly took off the shoes and stood up, her words cutting deeper than any knife could. She suggested that perhaps the problem wasn't what she was looking for, but the person trying to help her find it. How could I possibly understand what someone like her needed when I'd never been in her position? As she walked towards the exit, her parting words stung like salt in an open wound. She said I had a lot to learn from her, but doubted I had the ability or refinement to do so. I stood there, frozen, as April's comments made me acutely aware of the invisible wall separating our realities. In that moment, memories of my childhood on a rural farm came flooding back. I was born into a humble family, our lives revolving around field work. From a young age, I learned the value of hard work and perseverance, helping my parents with farm chores before and after school. It wasn't a life of luxury, but it was rich in family love and unity. I always dreamed of making a life that would give my parents a little pride and security. That dream led me to move to this city in search of a better life. But city living came with its own set of challenges, paying rent, sending money home to my parents. It was a constant struggle. I started working at this high-end shoe store, a job that demanded constant patience and a smile. As I faced difficult customers like April, I found myself organizing the last shelf, contemplating the irony of my situation. Here I was, selling shoes I could never afford to people who barely acknowledged my humanity. The humiliation I'd just experienced from Mrs. Johnson wasn't an isolated incident, but one of many difficulties I faced daily. I couldn't help but question, is this really worth it? Is this bringing me closer to the person I want to be? The weight of these questions seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. I knew how much it would pain my parents if they knew about my struggles. That's why I kept my daily hardships to myself, focusing instead on maintaining a sense of gratitude. But on nights like this, when the silence of the closed store mingled with the coldness of the indifference I'd received, I felt particularly vulnerable and demotivated. As I finally closed the store door and turned off the last light, I gazed out at the bustling street. Watching people hurry by, trying to escape the approaching night, I felt a mix of wonder and resentment at their obliviousness to my inner turmoil. It was moments like these that made me question everything, my choices, my dreams, and the path I was on. But little did I know that the very next day would bring an event that would change everything, not just for me, but for April Johnson as well.
Meanwhile, April arrived home, still seething with frustration from her encounter at the shoe store. She slammed the front door shut, the sound echoing through the wide hallways of her modern mansion in the suburbs. Without bothering to remove her coat, April marched straight to the kitchen. In the soft evening light filtering through the large windows, she roughly tossed her designer handbag onto the table. She then reached for a wine glass and filled it almost to the brim. Her movements were abrupt and filled with agitation. Glass in hand, April began pacing back and forth across the room. Each step resonated on the marble floor. "People just don't understand," April muttered to herself, taking a large swig of wine. "I don't have time for incompetence or excuses. With how hard I work, nothing less than perfection is acceptable." April's mind drifted back to the disappointing shoes Grace had shown her, mixing with other minor frustrations from the day. She paused in front of the window, gazing out at the garden as dusk began to fall. "I deserve respect. I deserve the best. It's not my fault if they can't meet expectations." She continued talking to her distorted reflection in the window pane. The wine was starting to take effect, dulling the sharp edges of her irritation, but it couldn't entirely quell the heat of her discontent. At that moment, April's daughter Bella entered the kitchen. She was a bundle of energy and cheerfulness, a stark contrast to her mother's dark mood. "Mom, you're home!" Bella exclaimed, running to April and throwing her arms around her. In that instant, April's irritation was replaced by affection for her daughter. April hugged Bella tightly, emotion welling up at the contact with her child. She took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of Bella's children's shampoo that always brought her comfort. "Bella, my darling. I'm so happy to see you," she whispered, her voice a mixture of love and relief. April sat down at the kitchen table, drawing Bella onto her lap. "Tell me all about your day, sweetheart." As Bella cheerfully recounted her adventures at school, April reflected on her journey to motherhood. It had been 15 years of setbacks, a cycle of fertility treatments, and countless doctor's appointments. Each failure had felt like a devastating blow, and each new hope had been a test of her resilience in the face of adversity. When April finally became pregnant, the journey was filled with challenges and anxiety. Every ultrasound, every tiny kick Bella made in her womb, was a miracle to April, and she cherished each moment. Bella's father had been lovingly supportive, though he already had children from a previous marriage. For April, there was a strong desire to complete her own family, to share the experience of being a birth mother rather than a stepmother. Bella was the center of April's universe, a dream come true. April was almost afraid to believe that this dream had become a reality. She remembered the nights during her pregnancy when she couldn't sleep, constantly caressing her belly and promising her unborn baby that she would be the best mother in the world. After Bella finished talking about the drawing she made at school, April confessed, "Bella, Mommy had a very difficult day today. But listening to your stories has made me feel so much better." April planted a grateful kiss on Bella's forehead, appreciating the peace and simplicity of the moment. Bella gazed at her mother with large green eyes, a mirror image of April's own. "When I grow up, I want to be strong and smart like you, Mommy," Bella said with a serious face, making April smile. Despite the worries still lingering in her heart, April hugged Bella even tighter. April felt a determination that no matter what happened, she would do anything to protect Bella's happiness and safety. The next morning, April's kitchen was filled with a pleasant aroma. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the sweet smell of pancakes, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. April, already dressed for work, focused on preparing a nutritious breakfast for Bella. She wanted her daughter to start the day energetic and happy. Bella came downstairs still sleepy, wearing unicorn-patterned pajamas. Her blonde hair was tousled from sleep, and she gave a drowsy smile at the sight of her favorite foods laid out on the breakfast table. "Mom, is all this for me?" Bella exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. April kissed Bella's forehead and helped her into her seat at the table. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat next to her daughter, watching as Bella enthusiastically dug into her breakfast. "Anything exciting happening at school today?" April asked. Bella nodded eagerly, her mouth full of pancakes. Bella's eyes sparkled with excitement and a hint of secrecy as she told her mother about the art class scheduled for that day. She explained that they were starting a Mother's Day project, and she planned to make something special for her mom. April felt a warm sensation in her heart as she listened to Bella's words. "That's wonderful, Bella. I can't wait to see what you create," April replied, her heart filling with love and gratitude for her daughter. During breakfast, their conversation centered around Bella's project plans, with April offering ideas and words of encouragement. After breakfast, April helped Bella prepare for school, carefully selecting her clothes and brushing her hair. As she braided Bella's blonde hair, April felt that these small daily rituals were strengthening the bond between mother and daughter. These quiet moments were a respite for April, allowing her to forget the tensions and worries of the outside world. Once ready, April and Bella left the house hand in hand. April walked Bella to the car, discussing what the day might bring. After dropping Bella off at school, April hugged her tightly and said, "Have a wonderful day, my darling. Learn a lot and have fun." April felt a slight hesitation as she let go of Bella. Bella waved goodbye with a smile and ran towards the school entrance. April watched until Bella entered the school, then paused for a moment, lost in thought before taking a determined breath and heading to work. She got into her car, ready to start another day, her heart feeling a little lighter. When April arrived at her office, Bella's final smile as she entered school was still resonating in her heart. As soon as she sat at her desk, she immersed herself in the day's work. She checked reports, responded to urgent emails, and prepared for several meetings scheduled for the day. Her office, located on the top floor of one of the most impressive buildings in the city, was a sophisticated and functional space. It reflected her decisiveness, organizational skills, and leadership style that always looked one step ahead. Near noon, as April was preparing for a board meeting, the TV news caught her attention. The screen showed dark clouds gathering over the city, and the meteorologist was warning of the most severe storm of the season approaching. April paused for a moment, feeling a surge of worry. Storms in the city could be devastating, and April's first thought was of Bella's safety. She temporarily left her desk and walked to the window, looking up at the increasingly dark sky. Considering the clear morning they had, this weather change seemed almost surreal. She picked up the phone and called Bella's school. April's professional tone changed to that of a concerned mother. She introduced herself as April Johnson and explained that she was calling to check if they were aware of the approaching storm and what preparations were in place to ensure the children's safety. The secretary who answered the phone reassured April that the school was prepared for the storm and all safety procedures were being implemented. Though somewhat relieved, April still felt uneasy as she thanked the secretary and ended the call. Her mind continued to race, wondering if there was anything more she could do to ensure her daughter's safety. Time seemed to crawl by. The reports April was reading were constantly interrupted by thoughts of the storm and Bella's safety. When the end of the workday finally arrived, April was ready to leave the office. She hastily packed her things and cast one more worried glance at the completely overcast sky. "I need to get to the school before the storm hits," April muttered to herself as she left the building and faced the impending storm. As she got into her car and drove under the threatening sky, April felt a mix of determination and fear. The news of the storm had disrupted her day, turning her usual work routine into a race against time. April adjusted the speed of her wipers, but even at their highest setting, she could barely maintain visibility. The roads quickly became waterlogged, and traffic soon descended into chaos. Cars moved at a snail's pace as drivers struggled to navigate the flooded streets. April felt her heart racing, her anxiety and frustration growing with each second stuck in traffic. She tried calling Bella's school again, but the line was busy, further fueling her worry. The clock on the car's dashboard seemed to move in slow motion, with each minute feeling like an hour. Finally, April arrived at Bella's school. The scene that greeted her was desolate. Part of the wall surrounding the school had collapsed, and rainwater had flooded the schoolyard and first-floor classrooms. Parents and teachers huddled in small groups, their faces etched with worry and fear. April leapt out of her car and ran towards the gate, her chest tightening at the sight before her. As she caught snippets of conversation from those around her, April was struck with terror upon hearing that the current was extremely strong, sweeping everything away, and that one child had been carried off by the water. Trying to maintain her composure, April approached a group of teachers. "Please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Can someone tell me about Bella? Is she safe? Where are the children?" But no one answered. The people around her seemed like blurry shadows, their voices an incomprehensible mix of fear and urgency. The rain continued relentlessly, each drop seeming to drive despair deeper into her heart. Suddenly, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. It was the school principal, Mrs. Carolyn. Known for her calm and decisive demeanor, her face bore a gravity April had never seen before. As their eyes met, April felt a chill run down her spine. Mrs. Carolyn called out to her, her voice trembling as she tried to be heard over the incessant rain. April rushed to her, her heart constricting with fear. "Carolyn, please, tell me my daughter is safe." April pleaded, her words breaking with anxiety as she fought back tears. The principal grasped April's hand tightly, trying to offer some support amidst the chaos. With a pained expression, Carolyn delivered the devastating news: Bella was missing, possibly swept away by the current during the evacuation. April felt her legs give way beneath her, her breath coming in short gasps. The principal's words echoed in her head like a nightmare. "This can't be happening. Bella. My little Bella," April whispered. As reality slowly sank in, tears mingled with the rain on her face, each drop a mixture of despair and unbelievable reality. Mrs. Carolyn, though sharing in the horror, promised in a strong voice that they were doing everything possible. Rescue teams were searching for Bella and the other children, and they wouldn't give up until they found her. April could only nod, unable to form words. The only thing she could cling to now was the hope that her daughter would be found alive. In that moment, April felt the weight of time. Each second seemed to stretch into eternity. With a heart on the verge of breaking, she stared at the principal, desperately seeking some comfort or sign of hope. Firefighters and rescue workers were running around the flooded school grounds, searching for any trace of the missing children. The sound of sirens and shouted instructions drowned out the relentless rain. April stood in the rain, watching the scene unfold before her. She observed every movement with a mixture of hope and fear. A firefighter approached April. He explained that while they were doing their best, he wanted her to understand the gravity of the situation. The current had been extremely strong and fast, and as far as they knew, her daughter couldn't swim. He stressed that while it was important to keep hope alive, they also needed to be realistic about the challenges they faced. Though he tried to maintain his composure, his eyes betrayed the harsh reality of his words. April felt as if a cold fist had gripped her heart. "I understand. I really do," she replied, desperately trying to keep her voice from shaking. "But please, keep searching. She's my everything. I can't just accept the worst as if it's any ordinary day." Her words were both a desperate whisper of a mother and a prayer not to succumb to fear. The firefighters returned to their search, their flashlights cutting through the deepening darkness as night approached. April stood in the mud and rising water, watching every move the rescue workers made in the murky flood that now covered what was once the school playground. As time passed with no news of Bella, her despair grew. April couldn't sit still or leave, pacing back and forth, driven by a restless, nervous energy. In her mind, images of Bella playing, laughing, and running to her after school mixed with terrifying visions of her struggling against the raging current.
I had just finished work and was heading home through the rain when I heard a cry that cut through the monotonous sound of the downpour. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I heard it again. It was unmistakably the sharp cry of a young girl calling for help. I looked around and spotted a small girl about 100 feet away, struggling against the current that had formed in the street. She was alone, desperately fighting not to be swept away. Without hesitation, I ran towards her. In that moment, I forgot my own fear and surrendered myself to the urgency of the situation. The water had already reached my waist, and its force was so strong that even as an adult, I could barely stand. When I reached the girl, her face was contorted with fear as she fought to stay afloat. "It's okay. I'll help you," I shouted over the sound of the rain. "What's your name?" I asked. She looked up at me with big eyes wet with tears and answered in a trembling voice, "Bella." I gripped Bella's hand tightly and told her my name was Grace. I promised to get her out of there and told her to hold on to me tightly. I pulled her closer, wrapping her in my arms. "You're safe now, Bella," I reassured her, trying to calm the girl as I began to move towards safer ground. The current tried to push us back, but I held on tight, each step a battle against the water's force. I felt the weight of responsibility as I looked at Bella. Her eyes reflected fear, but also trust. "We're almost there, Bella. Let's keep going," I encouraged her as we continued to fight against the flow. When we finally reached my house, I quickly closed the door, shutting out the sound of the storm. Inside, it was dark and cold. The power had been cut off early due to the storm. I took Bella to the bathroom, helped her out of her wet clothes, and quickly found some dry, warm clothes from my closet for her to wear. As I helped her change, I couldn't help but think of my own childhood, growing up on a farm in rural state. We often faced harsh weather, but nothing quite like this. The strength I found in myself at that moment reminded me of my mother, who always seemed to find courage in the face of adversity. I wondered if this is what she felt like when she protected us from the tornado that nearly destroyed our barn back in '69. "These might be a bit big for you, but they'll keep you warm," I said to Bella, my voice softer now that we were out of immediate danger. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, and I could feel my hands shaking slightly as I helped her into my old sweater. It was the one I used to wear on chilly mornings when I would help my father milk the cows before school. As I looked at Bella, wrapped in my clothes, safe but still scared, I felt a mix of relief and concern. I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. We still needed to find her parents and make sure she got home safely. But for now, in this moment, I had done what I could. I had saved this child, just as I would have wanted someone to save me if I had been in her shoes. It was a small victory against the chaos of the storm, but it felt monumental. As Bella started to warm up wrapped in a thick blanket, I carefully checked her for any injuries. I found a few scrapes and bruises, so I treated each one with the first aid kit I had at home. "This might sting a little, but it'll heal quickly," I explained softly as I applied antiseptic. After tending to her injuries, I took Bella to the kitchen to prepare some food. I made a sandwich with what I had on hand, thinking back to how my mother always said a good meal could cure almost anything. "Here, eat up. You've been through a lot, and you need your energy," I said, handing Bella the sandwich. Although she still seemed shaken, Bella began to eat slowly. Watching her, I felt relieved that she had escaped immediate danger. As Bella ate, I sat beside her, lost in thought. I reflected on the day's events, surprised by a courage I didn't know I had. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd be facing a flood to save someone. Yet, seeing Bella safe now, I felt proud that I had made the right decision. It reminded me of the time my father saved our neighbor's child from a burning barn back in '72. He always said you never know what you're capable of until you're tested. "How are you feeling now, Bella?" I asked, wanting to make sure she was comfortable not just physically, but emotionally too. Bella looked up at me with her big eyes, a small smile beginning to form on her lips. She said I was like a hero, thanking me with a serious expression that seemed beyond her years. I laughed gently and stroked her hair, telling her anyone would have done the same. I assured her we'd stay warm and safe, and that we'd find her mother together. As we cuddled on the sofa, listening to the lingering storm outside, I was reminded of nights spent in our storm cellar back home, waiting for tornadoes to pass. After a while, Bella and I discussed how to contact her mother. When Bella remembered her school's phone number, I immediately dialed it on my cell phone. Carolyn, the principal, answered, and I quickly explained that Bella Johnson was with me and safe. I could hear the relief in Carolyn's voice as she called it wonderful news. She told me that she would inform Bella's mother, April Johnson, right away. I gave her my address and thanked her for her help, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. As I hung up the phone, I realized that this ordeal was far from over, but at least now, help was on the way.
Carolyn immediately headed towards April, who was in the gymnasium with other worried parents. Approaching April, Carolyn quickly handed her a piece of paper with Grace's address written on it. She informed April that her daughter, Bella, had been found and was safe at this address. With trembling hands, April took the paper, tears of relief welling up in her eyes. She thanked Carolyn and rushed to her car, determined to get to her daughter as quickly as possible. The house April arrived at was modest, with no lights on. The entire area was likely without power due to the storm. Without wasting a moment, April ran to the house and knocked frantically. Her voice, almost drowned out by the storm, pleaded, "Please, please let me in. I'm looking for my daughter, Bella." The desperation in her voice was palpable, a mother's fear and hope intertwined in every word. The scene was reminiscent of those tense moments during the Great Floods of '93, when families were frantically searching for their loved ones. April's actions mirrored those of countless parents who had faced similar fears throughout history, from natural disasters to wartime evacuations. Her determination to reach her child, despite the dangers of the storm, spoke to the universal power of a parent's love. As she stood there, pounding on the door, April was every mother who had ever feared for her child's safety, every parent who had ever prayed for a miracle. The quiet house before her held the answer to her prayers, though she didn't know it yet. Inside, Grace and Bella were about to witness the powerful reunion of a mother and her child, a moment that would remind them all of the strength of family bonds in the face of adversity.
As I opened the door, our eyes met, and a moment of surprise and awkward silence hung in the air. I hesitated for a second, remembering the unpleasant encounter at the store just yesterday, but then I opened the door wide, wordlessly inviting April in. The rain continued to fall outside, providing a rhythmic backdrop to the tense situation. I could see the confusion in April's eyes as she realized I was the one who had saved her daughter. It was as if she was trying to reconcile the image of the saleswoman she had been rude to with the person who had rescued her child. Before either of us could speak, Bella's eyes lit up at the sight of her mother. She ran into April's arms, crying out "Mommy," with a mix of joy and relief that brought a lump to my throat. As the initial excitement of their reunion settled, Bella began to recount her terrifying experience. Her eyes still shone with residual excitement and adrenaline as she described how quickly the water had risen and how scared she had been. I watched as April held Bella tightly, whispering words of comfort and apology. The pain in April's voice was palpable, and I could see the guilt washing over her face with each word Bella spoke. Bella continued her story, her voice filled with wonder as she described how I had appeared and grabbed her hand, refusing to let go even as the current tried to pull us away. The admiration in her voice as she recounted how I'd brought her to safety made me feel both proud and embarrassed. I hadn't felt like a hero, I'd just done what anyone would do. As Bella detailed how I treated her wounds and made her a sandwich, I could see April's expression changing. The realization of what I'd done seemed to be sinking in, and I could almost see the wheels turning in her head as she remembered our interaction at the store. The shame and regret were evident on her face, and I felt a mix of sympathy and vindication. It was like watching someone come to terms with a hard truth, much like when my father finally admitted he'd been wrong about my career choice after years of disapproval. I stood there, unsure of what to say or do next, feeling like I was watching a pivotal moment unfold before my eyes. As I watched April struggling with her emotions, I could see the weight of her regret in every tear that fell. She was trying to meet my eyes, but the guilt seemed to make it almost unbearable for her. I heard her whisper, almost to herself, about how terribly she had treated me, despite my saving her daughter. The silence that fell between us was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain outside. I could almost hear April's heartbeat, pounding with the realization of her mistake. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and sincere. She told me she deeply regretted yesterday's incident. April acknowledged that her words had been unacceptable and unfair, especially considering the kindness I had shown her daughter today. She struggled to maintain her composure as she admitted there was no excuse for her behavior. I listened quietly, my face neutral but my eyes a mix of caution and kindness. April continued, explaining that she had been stressed about other things and had taken it out on me. She recognized that it had been completely wrong, that I had only been trying to help, and that she hadn't behaved as she should have either as a human being or as a customer. Her voice cracked as she expressed how ashamed she felt about her actions, especially in light of what I had done for Bella today. April looked into my eyes, seeking forgiveness. She asked if I could forgive not just her words, but her rudeness towards me. She acknowledged that she could never repay me for saving her daughter, but wanted to start by making amends for her mistake. I nodded slowly, a small smile forming on my lips. Sometimes, it takes a big event to make people see the error of their ways. I told April that I accepted her apology, understanding that everyone has bad days. I emphasized that what really mattered now was that Bella was safe. But I felt I needed to say something important. I stayed calm, even though the message I wanted to share was clear. I understand, April. Everyone makes mistakes, and we all have bad days. But I believe the real test of character is how we learn from those mistakes, and how we grow from them. I've watched how you've handled everything today, how you've taken responsibility and apologized. That shows me that you're capable of owning your mistakes and that you truly want to change. April listened carefully, clearly moved by my words. Thank you, Grace. I really appreciate your understanding and your words. I've had a lot to think about, and I promise I'm going to take this lesson seriously. After that deeply emotional and clearly unforgettable moment, April and Bella started preparing to leave my home, ready to head back to theirs. April turned to me, her eyes filled with gratitude. Grace, I really can't thank you enough. You didn't just save Bella, you opened my eyes to things I needed to see and understand. Your kindness and understanding didn't just make us feel safe, they gave us a chance for a better start. I smiled, feeling a mix of satisfaction and humility. I'm glad I could help, April. I'm just relieved that Bella is safe. And know that you're always welcome here. Despite the challenges of the day, it was clear that the bond between us had grown stronger than ever. Bella had been quietly listening to our conversation, and she gave me a tight hug. Thank you, Grace. Today, you were my hero. I hugged her back, feeling that new emotional connection between us. Come on, Bella. Let's go home and get some rest.
April reached out her hand to her daughter, and together, they walked toward the door. Before leaving, April turned to say her final goodbye, and saw Grace watching them from the entrance. The walk back home was quiet, the rain had finally stopped, and the sky began to brighten. In the car, April reflected on the events of the day. Remember, Bella, when you think back on today, how kindness and understanding can make all the difference. She said this while glancing at her daughter through the rearview mirror. Bella smiled and nodded. I'll remember, Mom. I'm just glad we're heading home together. That simple statement brought warmth to April's heart. She knew that the day's challenges would leave lasting lessons, but she was certain that with love and support, they could face any future obstacles. When they arrived home, April felt deeply grateful for their safety, for having her daughter by her side, and for finding an example of strength and compassion in Grace. News of Grace's bravery quickly spread through the neighborhood. It didn't take long before the entire community heard about the courageous actions of the young shop assistant who risked her life to save the daughter of the town's most well-known businesswoman. The story touched people's hearts, and they came to see Grace not just as a shoe store clerk, but as an example of true bravery and selflessness. A week after the event, the local residents decided to hold a small ceremony to thank Grace. Invitations were sent out, and the area surrounding the town square began to take on a festive atmosphere. Flags were raised, and messages of gratitude and recognition were displayed in prominent places, all filled with words of praise for Grace.
The day of the ceremony, I walked toward the square with my family and friends by my side. I felt an overwhelming sense of emotion rise up in me. I hadn't expected this kind of recognition, and to be honest, all the attention made me a little embarrassed. As we got closer, I could hear the murmurs of admiration and respect from the crowd that had gathered to celebrate my act of courage. There were community leaders, firefighters, and of course, April and Bella were there too. They looked deeply moved, just like everyone else. April had prepared a short speech, and when it was her turn to speak, she couldn't hold back her tears. She said that we were all there to honor a special woman with courage and compassion. She looked at me and said, "Grace, your actions on that rainy day saved Bella's life and brought light to a terrible situation. You touched all of us, and we are deeply grateful." Hearing her words made my heart swell. After her speech, I was called to the center of the square, where I was given a commemorative plaque and a symbol of gratitude from the community. As I looked around at the smiling faces, the applause echoing around me, I felt a wave of pride wash over me, but also a sense of responsibility. I told them, I only did what I thought was right, and I would do the same again in the same situation. It's an honor to receive this recognition, and I'm truly grateful, but please remember, each one of us has the power to make a difference in someone's life. We don't have to wait for a storm to become a hero. The celebration continued with music and light refreshments, and the townspeople had the chance to come up to me personally to offer their congratulations.
After Bella's heroic rescue, April was deeply shaken. The days that followed were filled with deep reflection on her actions and what she truly valued. She sat in her home office, staring out the window at the view beyond. April began to notice an unsettling pattern in her behavior. "I've been too focused on climbing the social and professional ladder," she muttered to herself, twirling a pen between her fingers. Status and recognition had seemed so important, but in hindsight, she had lost touch with her humanity in moments with others. That included her relationship with Grace. Admitting that was difficult. Each word was a reminder of past mistakes. Determined to make a significant change, April decided to start in the most challenging place she could think of. The next morning, she arrived at the grocery store with a new perspective. She gathered all the managers and employees for a meeting, unlike the usual performance reviews or sales strategies. "I don't want our company to just be a place where people come to work. I want it to be a place where everyone, no matter their position, is valued and respected," April declared. Her voice carried a conviction that caught the employees off guard, and they watched her with a mix of surprise and caution. April continued, "We're launching an employee support program. It won't just include traditional benefits, but also space for personal growth and professional development. We'll create a system where everyone has a voice and can contribute to improving the workplace." She gradually implemented these changes, personally overseeing the progress and involving herself at a level she hadn't before. April spent more time with the employees, getting to know them not just as coworkers but as individuals. Each shared story, each smile exchanged at the register or in the stockroom, strengthened her resolve. These changes extended into her personal life as well. April made a point to cherish the small moments with Bella, spending time in conversation and play without being interrupted by work calls. She also reached out to Grace, not just to offer support, but to build a genuine friendship based on the mutual respect that had grown from that traumatic event. As April looked back on the months after the storm, she realized that the true measure of success wasn't climbing the social ladder or accumulating wealth. It was about making a positive impact on the lives of those around her. It was a profound shift, marking the start of a new chapter, one rooted in humility and a clear intention to do good.
I remember the day when Amy, the owner of the shoe store where I worked, called me into a private meeting. The store had just resumed regular operations, and the flow of customers was stable. It felt like a sign that life in the town was slowly returning to normal. Amy smiled at me encouragingly and said she had watched my work, especially my remarkable actions during the storm. She told me I had shown leadership and courage, which was exactly what our store needed for a higher role. I felt a surge of surprise and hesitation as I asked if she was offering me the position of store manager. Amy nodded and affirmed that she believed I was the right person to lead the team. She said I was already respected by everyone here and had the ability to handle situations under pressure. How could I not feel a mix of excitement and responsibility at that moment? This was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, a new challenge that promised great rewards. I told her I would gladly accept the offer and would do my best. My heart raced with anticipation, beating fast at the prospect of the future ahead. Not long after, we organized a special event to celebrate my promotion and the arrival of a new collection of shoes. April and Bella were invited as honorary guests, making the occasion not just a commercial celebration but a symbol of our rekindled strong friendship. The store was elegantly decorated, showcasing the new shoe line. Standing beside April and Bella, we exchanged laughter and comments about each passing model. April looked at me with admiration and said it was wonderful to see things changing for the better. She praised me for the great job I was doing. I felt a grateful smile spread across my face as I responded to her, thanking her for being there. Having both of them by my side meant the world to me. Bella squeezed our hands, looked up at me, and asked if I could design a pair of shoes just for her one day. I laughed and told her, of course, that would be one of my first projects in my new position. The event continued with a toast to celebrate the new manager, the new collection, and the power of friendship and forgiveness. April, Bella, and I stood together, bonded more strongly than before, looking forward to the future with hope and enthusiasm. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I felt certain we had each other's invaluable support. My story, the tale of a saleswoman who faced humiliation from a customer but saved that very customer's daughter, serves as a powerful reminder that actions speak louder than words. It was in times of crisis that a person's true character is revealed. Not only did I save Bella from the flood, but I also forgave April, helping her to rethink her actions, demonstrating a kind of spiritual greatness.
If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing wonderful stories every day. Don't miss the amazing stories that will appear next on the screen. Thank you for your support. Until next time, take care.